Hey guys, it's your friendly neighborhood reviewer with InToIt Reviews. I'm lucky enough to finally have a Focal Elex in the house. This headphone has been a great white buffalo for me of sorts, as it is one of the few headphones that I've always wanted to hear that I just couldn't seem to track down. And finally, thanks to Dave with DBS Tech Talks, I finally have been able to hear what all the fuss is about. So let's get into it. So first of all, let me give a big thank you to Dave with DBS Tech Talks for sending out his own personal Elex to my channel for review. I really appreciate the support. So, for my audience, make sure to hit like and subscribe on this channel if you haven't done so already. And then, at the conclusion of this video, head over to Dave's channel and do the same there. I'll place a link in the description for his channel to make it easier for you to do this. So let's start things off with the sound and what the Elex does great. The Elex has what some might call thick booty bass, meaning it has a lush bass which is mildly emphasized yet very resolving and articulate overall. However, it does have more of a sub-bass focus than a mid-bass one. Nevertheless, I would say that this is one of the best basses that I've heard in an open-back dynamic headphone regardless of price to date. Having said that, the mids and the treble come across somewhat thin in comparison. Vocals can be mildly shouty at times, and as a result the Elex can be mildly fatiguing over time. Listening fatigue is also a difficulty due to the Elex's underlying metallic timbre, which is mild but also somewhat unnatural. The Elex sounded its most natural on warmer timbered amps, sounding its best on the Loxg P20 and the Gold Note DS10, and less natural on the THX AAA 789. However, I will say that this is the least metallic sounding Focal headphone that I have heard to date, and I have heard the full line at this point. But, timbre still remains Focal's biggest limitation, even on the Elex. The soundstage is circular, and it extends as much in width as it does in depth. At times, I felt like the soundstage was egg-shaped or football-like, depending on the track. Separation is above average, but imaging was all over the place and not very precise, even though it was well defined. This made for a unique and immersive experience, but it was difficult to place sonics in space accurately on a variety of recordings. Images were spaced out and distinct, just not where they should have been located in space. For example, if a cello was stage right, it might be oddly behind your head instead on the Elex. This might make for a fun gaming set, but not necessarily a truthful one. Dynamics have a good range to them, both including micro and macro dynamics. Yet, while the sound of the mids are pushed forward, they lack harmonic richness overall, which is particularly evident on guitar-centric tracks. The global sound of the Elex is somewhat sparse overall, leaning somewhat towards the drier side of things. The entirety of the presentation has a slight echo to it, but some might perceive the Elex to be rather open or airy. Compared to the 6XX, mids are less lush, but the treble is extended better, and the bass is less sloppy and more impactful. The Elex is also easier to drive. Some have called the Elex a logical upgrade to the HD600 or the 6XX, but honestly, those headphones do some things better than the Elex and vice versa, as the Elex excels versus those headphones in other areas. For example, staging is much better with the Elex, but if you are after tonal accuracy and a lush mid-range, I'd stick with the 6XX. Resolution is also only marginally better on the Elex. Overall, resolution is good, but I wouldn't call it excellent, and you can definitely do better for the price. Compared to the Ether CX, which has a similar price, the CX easily wins for clarity and detail within most of the range. Overall resolution is also better on an EmuTeak, which is only $400, even if this is a more musical headphone compared to the Elex. The Elex has some mild graininess here or there that leaves me wondering why someone would spend $600 to $700 on this thing. $400 to $450 seems like the right price to me given the resolution and presentation here. But focals are known for being overpriced, and the Elex is no different, I suppose. But perhaps the build is how they justify the higher price tag, and the Elex is built somewhat like a tank. It is mostly made of metal, and the headphone overall is pretty hefty. The cups are spring-loaded for comfort, but this also places pressure on the lower third of the cup where it meets the wearer's jaw. The weight of this thing does wear on my neck over long listening sessions as well, and it does feel like I'm wearing a football helmet or a wrestling cap at times. However, despite these criticisms, the Elex is stylish to look at in my opinion, and its blacked out colorway is also visually appealing. The top of the headband appears to be lined with a leatherette that might damage quite easily. The unit that I was provided with has a small cat-like scratch on the top of the headband from normal use. For the price of this thing, I would expect Focal to use real leather here instead. The underside of the headband is the same microfiber material as the memory foam earpads. While the sound of the included earpads was good, the smell of the material I found to be off-putting, and it had a musty scent to it. Overall, comfort was decent, but it could also be better. I would have preferred perforated sheepskin pads for the price of this thing. 2 cables are provided with the Elex, a single-ended and a balance cable, but they are somewhat short, flat, stiff, and although they are aesthetically pleasing and usable, I would ultimately recommend swapping these out immediately upon purchase. I might consider a cable from Heart Audio Cables, as I find their cables to be appropriately priced, easy to work with, and very good sounding. In summary, the Focal Elex is a good all-arounder. It is an immersive open back with decent detail and good dynamics, but its best characteristics are its bass and its soundstage, even if it suffers with imaging accuracy in the end. The Elex is almost a jack of all trades, but a master of none. Well, except for the bass. The bass is really good, but for a dynamic, its timbre is also flawed, thanks to, well, it being a Focal. Even though I've been somewhat critical of the Elex in certain areas, it does do a lot of things really well. If I only had it as a reference headphone and nothing else to compare it to, I think I would actually like the Focal Elex a lot more than I do. And just a reminder guys, at the 500 subscriber mark, I'll be giving away a set of Koss KSC75s, so make sure to hit like and subscribe, especially if you want to be considered for the giveaway. I also have an Instagram and a Twitter now, and I'll place links to those in the description below, so make sure to check those out as well. And with that, I'm out for now.